this is Faith at House Fraud Homestead. I'm finally ready to make a video that has been a long time coming and is actually going to be two different videos now because it is a big topic. And that topic is setting the tone in our homes as homemakers. And I've hemmed and hawed for a while about how I was going to make this video because it is a big topic, it's a contentious topic, it's rife with systemic issues and learned conditioning and baggage and trauma and a lot of the things that we have come to believe are part and parcel to homemaking but don't really have to be. And a conversation with my husband recently reminded me that our goal as homemakers is so much bigger than just going through the motions of cooking and cleaning and decorating and all of the actions. It's really about attitude and the warmth that we bring to our homes. So the goal of this video is going to be to shine a light on some ways in which we might be bringing negative attitudes to our homes without resorting to some spiritual bypassing that can be present in some cases in the Christian homemaking and biblical femininity spheres, where they would have you keep sweet, pray and obey. You know, we've all heard that kind of thing. And this is nothing against Christian homemakers. If you can bring your higher power of any flavor into this conversation and make it work for you, more power to you, more higher power to you. So just to get that out of the way. And this is also going to be a little bit of tough love for myself included, as we bring up some topics that are likely to bring up a little bit of defensiveness. So my encouragement to you guys would be, if something pushes a button, sit with it. But before you find a way to make this not work for you, make yourself an exception, just sit with it. And I could be wrong for your case, but if there's something coming up that might be more of a conviction than a trigger, then you know better than I do what will work in your situation. So I'm trusting everyone to apply this to their situation through their lens. And that also goes for heteronormative language. Your mileage of gender terminology may vary, but that is the experience that I've had, is with the male-female dichotomy, growing up with that and living with that now. So that's a lot of the language I'm going to be using. So, shall we? I see, from my lens, and I've stewed on this for a little while, I see three different flavors of negative mindsets that kind of tie into each other in a closed loop, if you will. So one feeds the other, feeds the other, feeds the other. They can go in any direction. You can connect them. I'm going to start at the source, and this is the one that a lot of people are going to be familiar with. I alluded to it in one of my last videos, and that is martyrdom. The mindset of, I have to do everything myself. And this is something that a lot of us grew up with. A lot of us had modeled to us by our mothers the long-suffering, women's work is never done mentality. A lot of us watched our mothers grind themselves to the bone, and it's sort of become a false virtue amongst the caregiving class. And you know, the female roles in general, the female flavored roles, tend to be self-sacrificial, and we hold this up societally as a badge of honor, and it's fundamentally unsustainable. So what has to happen with this mindset, if you find yourself saying, oh, it's fine, I'll take care of it, don't worry about me, and just building this resentment, and we'll get to that in a minute, where you feel like the whole world's on your shoulders, a fundamental mindset shift has to take place. Because I did this for a long time myself. I felt like it is my job and my job alone to keep everything alive. And when you're in this mindset, you feel like what you're doing has to extract from you. It has to be something that takes from you. It's a zero-sum game. And that is completely unsustainable because there's only so much of you to give. And you're probably feeling this at this point. I know I was. So if you shift from thinking that you have to keep things alive to, you have to, and you not even have to, you get to, as a homemaker, in a healthy version of that, you get to breathe life into your home. What would breathing life look like? That would require you on some level to be tapped into a source that enables you to give without feeling depleted. And for a lot of us, that would mean taking a step back and putting ourselves first. And that feels like a dirty word to a lot of us. We've made an enemy of any self-focus whatsoever when we're in these caregiving roles, where it feels like if I put myself before my partner, my kids, my animals, my household, the whole thing is going to come crushing down, or I'm going to have to pick up the slack later. And it's, unfortunately, even though it feels like it's the most optional thing, it's really the least optional thing. As the source of all these things to all these people, we really have to put ourselves first in that way. And, you know, if you're not going to be praying about it, if you're not going to, you know, call upon a higher power to impart that breath of life into you to breathe out to others, then you have to kind of do it your own. So it's so much bigger. Self-care gets wrapped up as, you know, take a bubble bath, you know, the wine mom thing, and basically just coping. And what I'm talking about is maybe you have to do some shadow work. Maybe you have to do some therapy. Maybe there's something that you are telling yourself you need to do that you really don't need to do. If we pick apart, I'm an English major, so I have to get linguistic about this. If we pick apart, I have to do everything myself. Do you have to do everything? What on your plate doesn't need to be on your plate? I think if we're honest with ourselves, a lot of the things that we're doing are not strictly necessary and do not necessarily have to be done by just us. But there is a need, a non-negotiable need to put yourself in a place where you are only doing as much as you can realistically do. So maybe that looks like sitting down with a list and mapping out what a triage sort of thing would look like. Maybe it's identifying things that you are not doing for yourself that you need to be doing. Maybe you're not pursuing the creative things you'd like to be doing. Maybe you're not taking enough breaks. And I mean real breaks, like out of the house, spending money on yourself breaks, not just 10 minutes in the bathroom by yourself. So if you were investing in yourself to the degree that you'd need to sustain not only yourself, but your responsibilities, what would that look like? Because that's the prerequisite. That's not after you get everything else done. I have to tell myself this all the time. That is what you do first. And from there, when you are filled, when your own cup is filled and you feel like you're tapped into something that's fueling you, whether it's creativity or, sorry, husband's walking past, whether it's creativity or it's rest or it's solving a problem, you know what fuels you. And if you don't, this is a good time to explore that. Do that, and do that first. And then what you do from there will be an extension of your having been fed and your having been filled rather than something being taken from you. Now, in some cases, we are going to need to delegate and, you know, bring in some outside help. Maybe we are doing too much. And that's where resentment comes in. That's our second bucket. The belief that other people around me are not doing enough. And this may or may not be true. I can only speak to my experience living with a partner. I've never had children, so I'm not qualified to speak to that. You can find so many resources on doing this with kids. I'm not going to be qualified to talk about that. But I know for me, I spent a long time holding my partner to standards that he didn't share. And the narrative that we tend to project on this situation is, if he loved me, he would X. If he doesn't care about this thing, he doesn't care about me. And that is meaning that we are creating and we are projecting. That is not meaning that that is actually necessarily true. Often what is the case is those itty-bitty little things that we consider the standard of completion and the standard of care, like crumbs on the floor are unacceptable, smudges on the mirror. Don't get me started on smudges on the mirror. Those are the standard of done by our definition. And their standard of done might mean the heavy ends are picked up. The baseline level of completion has been accomplished, and maybe 10 to 20% remains that's not to your standards. So this is where we kind of have a choice to make. Do we want to push on that 10 to 20% that we consider the bare minimum standard of care and exhaust ourselves? Or perhaps, do we want to lower our standards a bit? And we'll get to why we feel like we can't lower our standards necessarily in a minute. So this is where you have to really consider, am I serving the house more than the house is serving me? And I think that's where a lot of guys especially have a different set of standards than we do. A lot of us as homemakers feel like we have to be serving the house and making the house into something presentable for others. And whereas a guy can live in what we would consider squalor and feel like his house is serving him. So somewhere between the two, most likely, is something sustainable. And this is where we have to let go of this notion that we have to bring our households up to our standards necessarily. Because I think a lot of us, and this is true for my husband at least, would like us to have their peace and their sense of feeling at home in the home, and don't really want to join us in what looks like a thankless pursuit of perfection. Because if you think back to, I think we all have memories like this, if we had this type of mother. If you think back to Christmas morning and how frantic your mother was about getting the house picked up for company and pretending that that was how you guys lived all the time and how unfun that was. You didn't want to join her in that state because you didn't care. Most of the time our households don't share this imperative to have the house perfect for company. We want to feel like we, from that perspective, when you're not the homemaker, when you're the kid or the spouse, you want to just feel at home in your home on Christmas morning. It's not important to you that everything be spotless for people who don't even live there. So it might be worth asking your household, how do you want to feel at home? Not how do you want your home to feel. That is an important distinction, because you can say that you want your home to feel peaceful and make yourself anything but peaceful, creating a peaceful feeling home. How do you want to feel at home as a household? And identify that for yourselves, because that will give you household values to aim your efforts around. So if you want to feel relaxed at home, and let's say visual clutter gives you anxiety and you don't feel relaxed at home with visual clutter, but your partner doesn't feel relaxed at home with you barking at him to identify every single crumb everywhere, somewhere between the two is where you'd ultimately arrive. So something that a good friend and mentor of mine and I talk about frequently is a concept of pockets versus purses. And I think where a lot of homemaking types get overburdened is in feeling like they have to carry the purse for the household. They have to have every little thing prepared for every little contingency and think of everything. And it can be easy to feel resentful of someone who only has the bare minimum in their pockets or takes 10 minutes to pack, because it feels like they're not considering all of these potentials and emergencies and they're not going to be prepared. But in reality, what's often happening is a sense of, I don't need to carry every single thing for every possible emergency because I can adapt. And that's where there's some wisdom to taking some things out of our purses that might not be as necessary as lightening our load in the short term. So one of those things can be, and this is a fundamental mindset shift I've had to make, is the party who is going to be the most burdened in the household with the minutia is going to be the one with the lowest tolerance for chaos. Full stop. So in many cases, and it's not comfortable to do, we really have to increase our tolerance for chaos. And maybe that looks like the kids' outfits don't match, or someone has cereal for dinner. Some slack can be cut in various ways that don't mean we're a failure necessarily. And we have to root out this mentality that we are failing if all of these things aren't perfect. But in some cases also, we've asked for the help we feel we need, we've lowered our standards, and sometimes we're still pouring from a half-empty bucket because we're fundamentally unsupported. And this is where we kind of have to ask ourselves, if no one in this house is going to change, what would I do? And sometimes that looks like just dropping some of the balls that you've been spinning in the air and juggling. And it might mean that you're in a situation that is never going to support you, and you might need to make a different decision about that situation. And I can't tell you which situation that's going to be. So it's important to ask those scary questions about what is actually going to happen if we don't spin all those plates by ourselves, because we can't. That's how you get folks who, and some of us have had mothers like this, where she's doing everything and then she snaps, and it's like a complete bait and switch. And that's not what those of us who are watching this video and care about these topics want to do to our households and our families. It is so much better to identify the ways in which we're overextended and correct for them early, but it's so easy to feel like if somebody else just stepped up, then that would solve all our problems. And to beg and plead and cajole, and sometimes you have to step down first before somebody else will step up. And somebody else might not step up, but that doesn't mean you can't step down. That's what I had to do, is just put down the things that I couldn't keep up, irrespective of who else was going to pick them up. Because if we're honest with ourselves, a lot of what we're doing, we're not doing for reasons that really serve us. And this comes to my third point. So much of what we're tasking ourselves with is founded fundamentally in anxiety and shame, and a belief that we should be doing more than we currently are. And this can come from so many places. It can come from how we were raised. It can come from, our mothers-in-law and society and Instagram and all of these different places that are telling us that our house should look like Pinterest and it should look like a Target ad. And all of these things should be true. And that creates this anxiety in us that we can project on our households, like they're not helping us and supporting us in being this arbitrary thing that we've been told we need to be, unless they are as anxious as we are. And that does not lead to a happy home, because you have this mentality that if I'm anxious and I'm supported, everyone else is anxious with me. And really, you don't need to. I mean, that's easy to say. It's internalized in many places. And we also, as homemakers, I'm going to say it, we police each other a lot. Women are not great about not judging other women. If you poll all the men in your life about what they remember about Christmas dinner, for instance, we'll keep using that example, they don't remember how clean the house is. They remember that there was a good meal, and they remember how stressed you were about it. So if you were going to have a low stress situation, whether you got help or not, that might look like lowering your expectations for yourself and letting some people be disappointed. But the people who are usually disappointed are the people who feel like they have to hold themselves to that standard too. If your mother-in-law is coming into your house and taking the white glove to your baseboards and saying there's dust there, that's because she's holding herself to that standard, and someone else told her she had to hold herself to that standard. We can break that cycle. We can go over to other people's houses and remark on how warm it feels and how nice it feels to be there and how good the food is, etc. And distract from the ways in which the house might be imperfect, and not add to this burden we all seem to collectively feel that we have to keep up appearances and be perfect and make it look like we live in a magazine all the time. Because it's not fun to pull off. The people we really care about and who really matter to us don't value that. So why are we doing it? And if your mother-in-law is disappointed with your baseboards, then fuck her. I'm sorry, but that's just, if you decide that that's not a priority to your family to stress out for arbitrary little things like that really don't serve the household, that is just as valid. And that doesn't mean she'll give herself permission to not keep her baseboards tidy, but it's really not the end of the world. And the way to freedom from all of these arbitrary expectations and the shame that we have is rooting out the shame and doing what feels natural and good for us to do, even if it's disappointing to somebody. Let other people be disappointed. That is their problem. The people that you want to please, and not even please, but just share an extension of your warmth and your peace with, are your immediate household. If they're not living there, they don't get a say. Like, your mother-in-law can just, shove her opinion of your baseboards where the sun don't shine. We have to, as homemakers, as women, as anyone in these caregiving roles, root out this judgment we have of each other. Because that's how we get this neurotic mentality that drives us into this cycle of martyrdom and resentment and anxiety in perpetuity, and it really just poisons how people feel in their own homes, including us. So this has all been a prerequisite to the next video, which is going to be how to set a positive tone in your home. But really, these things have to be rooted out first, because these are holes in the bucket of our homemaking. So if you can identify these ways in which you're extending yourself in unconstructive ways and get to a place where what you do feeds you first and is an extension of this place of fullness, it will be so much easier to not feel like you're a dark cloud over your home, or that you're faking it and keeping up appearances. And you'll find, I found, that you can enjoy things more. You can enjoy your home and your family and your household more when you're not putting yourself in this position to keep everything alive at your own expense. Because you can't keep that up. I'm sorry. So thank you all for joining me today. Do like, comment, and subscribe, because I'm actually trying to take this YouTube homestead brand thing somewhat seriously. I'm kind of realizing that in terms of the attention economy, you can't beat it and you have to join it. So I'm going to be trying to learn editing and take better quality videos, and to that end, I've set up a Patreon. I'll have the link there. I'm hoping to do some live streams, behind the scene footage. There's plenty of bloopers from this video that'll certainly be included. But I'm really trying to get this to a place where it at least pays for itself, because this is what I feel like I want to be doing, more so than the hustle, grind, all of that stuff. And if you guys are getting value out of it, then that's worth it to me, even if it's not going to blow up. This is a pretty niche circle, but I hope you guys did get something out of it. Stay tuned for the next one in this series, which will hopefully happen a little bit sooner. And thank you for your support as I've tried to build this, and we'll see where it goes. So thanks all, and have a good one.